Welcome to human and time. Settle in wherever you are and allow the world around you to become a little quieter. If these journeys bring you peace, you can gently support human and time by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And now, without needing to go anywhere at all, let us leave our own century behind. There is a castle above the River Wye. Not the broken castle that survives for us now, open to rain and sky, its chambers emptied, its roofs long vanished. The castle before us is still whole, its doors hang from their hinges. Timber floors divide the towers into living spaces. Roofs rise above walls that have not yet learned what it means to become ruins. Fires burn where today only empty fireplaces remain, and behind shuttered openings there are people who do not know that we will one day call their world medieval. The year is 1296. England is under Edward I, though here, high above a bend in the Wye, the presence of kings feels distant. The river below continues through the valley with an older patience. It curves beneath wooded slopes and past fields and settlements, carrying its dark water through the country regardless of who owns the land above it. And on the sandstone height overlooking that river stands Goodrich Castle. The stone has a warmth of colour even beneath a cold sky. Much of the castle surrounding the older square keep is the work of William de Valence, a powerful nobleman whose marriage to Joan de Valence brought Goodrich into the de Valence family. Over the later decades of the 13th century, the place has been transformed. Curtain walls, towers, a formidable gatehouse, a great hall, private chambers, a chapel and service spaces have gathered around the older keep until Goodrich has become something more complicated than a fortress. It is a defended residence, certainly, but it is also a household, and that distinction changes everything, for a castle like this does not wake only when an enemy appears beyond the walls. Most days contain no siege, no arrows, no assault upon the gate. Stone that could resist violence spends far more of its existence surrounding ordinary things: bread, accounts, horses' prayer, wet clothing, tired servants, stored food, whispered instructions, firewood, footsteps, and sleep. Tonight those things matter more than war. William de Valence is dead. He died in May of this year, and his widow, Joan de Valence, now moves through a world altered by his absence. She is no decorative figure hidden at the edge of the household. Her estates, possessions, servants, and obligations form an administrative world of remarkable scale, and the surviving traces of that world allow us to come unusually close to this particular moment. Joan has come to Goodrich. With her is Beatrice de Valence, her daughter-in-law, and around them is a household large enough to make the castle feel less like a solitary stone refuge and more like a small moving community. Joan's wider household could vary greatly in size as it travelled between residences. During this stay at Goodrich, the number associated with her company is around 120 servants. 120. Try not to imagine them standing together in neat rows. Instead, let that number dissolve into movement. Someone is carrying grain. Someone is checking a horse. Someone is tending bread. Someone is passing through a doorway with an object needed elsewhere. Someone has an account to record. Someone has been sent with an instruction. Someone is preparing a room for a person of higher rank. Someone is cold. Someone is hungry. Someone has been working since before you arrived. And somewhere among all those movements, names have survived, Ralph Blute, associated with the chapel and household accounts, Giles of Barrington, a chaplain, Roger de Inkpen, a knight connected with Joan's administration, John, a baker, Walter, a farrier whose work belongs to the world of horses, iron, and worn shoes, Hamo, connected with the household's transport. Their names come quietly through the centuries. We know almost nothing of the thoughts passing through their minds on any particular winter day. Their private jokes are gone. Their irritations are gone. We cannot recover the exact words they spoke to one another, or know which servant looked forward to sleep, and which still had hours of work ahead, but the names remain, and sometimes a name is enough to make a distant place feel inhabited. The castle ahead of us is inhabited now. Before entering, remain outside for a moment. Goodrich occupies a commanding position above the Wye, and from here the reason for placing a castle upon this ground needs little explanation. The land falls away steeply toward the river. The height gives stone architecture an authority that begins before anyone reaches the gate. Yet authority is only one part of what you would notice. There is weather here. There is moving air against the face, moisture held in the valley, earth beneath the feet, trees upon the slopes and the river below. The cold belongs not to a romantic image of the Middle Ages, but simply to the season and the landscape. When fabric becomes damp, it remains close against the body. Wool that has met mist or rain carries moisture with it toward shelter. Mud clings to footwear. Exposed stone loses the warmth of daylight quickly. The castle promises protection from wind and rain. It does not promise modern warmth. Its walls can keep weather outside, but stone itself holds cold differently from timber, cloth or skin. To enter Goodrich is not to step from winter into a uniformly heated interior. Warmth exists in islands, a hearth, a kitchen, a chamber with a fire, a body beneath wool, a place near another person. Between those islands are stairs, passages, corners and rooms where the season can still be felt. The entrance waits ahead. In our own century, a castle gate is often something we pass through casually. We notice the masonry, perhaps look upward and continue. In 1296, the architecture asks more of the eye. The gatehouse is part of William de Valence's transformed Goodrich, built to make entry controllable. Stone surrounds the passage. Defensive mechanisms belong to the structure itself. Heavy doors and a portcullis can turn this opening from an invitation into a barrier. Above and around it, masonry has been shaped with the knowledge that anyone entering the castle can be observed, and, if necessary, stopped. But there is no battle here, so the gatehouse performs another function. It separates one kind of world from another. Outside lies the valley. Inside lies the household. Pass beneath the stone. The sound changes first. Open country allows sound to escape. Inside a gate passage, footsteps return from surfaces around you. A voice seems closer. The movement of wood or iron becomes momentarily larger. Then the passage releases you, and the inner ward opens. Goodrich is no ruin. Remember that. The courtyard is not an archaeological exhibit. Missing floors have not yet disappeared. The towers are not hollow shells. Roof lines interrupt the sky. Timber doors close openings that will one day stand empty. Windows belong to rooms rather than to picturesque fragments of wall. And some of the architectural features a future visitor will associate with Goodrich are not yet here in their later form. The castle is still changing. Its outer stone barbican belongs to a later phase, so we do not place it before Joan tonight, nor do we give the great hall the large later Gothic traceried windows that will alter its appearance after this period. The Goodrich of 1296 is not simply the modern ruin repaired. It is an earlier castle, complete in ways the ruin is not, yet still waiting for alterations that its inhabitants cannot foresee. The older keep rises within this newer world like a memory enclosed by another memory. Its square form belongs to an earlier Goodrich. Around it, the late 13th century work has created a more sophisticated residence, with the great hall and private spaces integrated into the life of the inner ward. The courtyard binds these places together, and because Joan has arrived with such a large household, it cannot remain still for long. The scale of preparation for her presence can be glimpsed in one extraordinary surviving number. 80. 1 pigs were slaughtered for Joan's arrival at Goodrich in November 1296. 80. 1. Do not picture the act itself. There is no need to disturb the quiet of our journey with it. Think instead about what such a number means after the work is done. It means storage. It means preparation. It means hands. It means knives cleaned and put away, meat moved and preserved, spaces occupied by provisions, people responsible for keeping food usable through the weeks ahead. It means that a noble household is not sustained by a single kitchen fire and a picturesque loaf upon a wooden table. It is sustained by logistics. A castle of 120 servants consumes. It consumes grain and meat, ale and fuel. It requires horses to be fed, shoes to be maintained, candles to be obtained, rooms to be kept usable, and accounts to remember where resources have gone. The noble life visible at the high table rests upon an enormous quieter structure of work. That work has its own geography. Toward the service side of the great hall are the places concerned with food and drink, kitchen spaces, storage, pantry and buttery functions. The exact movements of every servant cannot be recovered, and we should not pretend otherwise. But the architecture itself makes one thing clear. Food must move from the world of preparation toward the world of dining, and empty vessels must eventually travel away again. Imagine the castle not as a collection of rooms, but as currents. Bread moves one way, fuel another, water another. Messages pass through all of them. A servant crosses the courtyard while another disappears through a doorway. A horse shifts somewhere beyond the immediate domestic rooms. A door opens and closes. The wind enters briefly with whoever passes through it. Then the interior gathers itself again. John the baker belongs somewhere within this immense chain of necessity. We cannot stand beside him and invent what he says. We cannot know whether his hands ache tonight or whether he is thinking about tomorrow, but bread is not an abstract historical category here. Joan's arrival required extensive baking, and a baker appears among the people whose identities survive. So there is flour, there is dough, there is heat. There is the smell of bread reaching spaces where the stone itself has no smell strong enough to compete. And there is something deeply ordinary about that. Centuries will turn Goodrich into history. Tonight it is a place where someone has to make bread. That may be one of the gentlest ways to understand the past, not through the things people built hoping to be remembered, but through the things they did because morning would come. The great hall waits nearby. It is the social heart of the household, but even the word great can mislead us if it makes the room feel ceremonial at every moment. A hall changes with its occupants. Empty, it is architecture. Filled, it becomes movement, hierarchy, and sound. Its stone walls would not necessarily present the bare, grey interior that ruined castles have taught modern eyes to expect. Medieval high-status interiors could be plastered and lime-washed, and textiles could soften spaces that would otherwise feel severe. Timber completes what stone begins. Furniture is movable. Trestle tables and benches can transform an open floor into a dining space and later disappear toward walls or storage. Fire changes it most of all, not because fire defeats the cold everywhere. It does not. But because a flame creates a center. Near it, the air is different. Wood cracks. Light moves across faces. Heat reaches one side of the body, while the other remains aware of the room beyond. Smoke and the scent of burning wood become part of the hall's air. Farther from the warmth, the stone keeps the season. The contrast matters. People in this world do not enter a uniformly warm building and remove winter from themselves. They negotiate distance from fire. They use cloth wool, bedding, enclosed chambers, and human proximity. Comfort is unevenly distributed, just as food, privacy, and status are unevenly distributed. Joan's household understands such differences without needing them explained. Rank is visible in space. The upper end of a hall is not merely another place to sit. Private chambers are not merely quieter rooms. Access itself is part of status. Some people can withdraw from the communal world, others remain within it. Some sleep behind doors and textiles, others find rest in shared spaces whose daytime purposes have ended. Yet privacy, even among the elite, should not be imagined in the modern sense. A great household depends upon attendance. Clothing, food, messages, fires, horses, documents, and worship create reasons for people to enter one another's spaces. A nobleman may command an estate, yet still live surrounded by servants. A chaplain may belong to the intimate religious life of the household while also occupying an administrative world. A baker may never sit where the countess sits, yet the countess's table cannot exist without the baker. Hierarchy separates them. Dependence joins them. And so Goodrich breathes through relationships that stone alone cannot show. Somewhere within that breathing world, Ralph Blute keeps account, numbers are being written because large households must remember food consumed, money spent, supplies obtained. The movement of resources leaves marks upon parchment long after the footsteps themselves disappear. It is because someone recorded such things that more than 7 centuries later we can know something as strangely intimate as the food prepared for Joan's arrival. The great events of medieval history are often preserved because kings and armies demanded records. But here another kind of survival occurs. Pigs survive as numbers, eggs survive as numbers, servants survive as names, and a household returns. The irony would be invisible to Ralph as he works. A line entered for practical reasons can outlive the walls around the person writing it. Perhaps this is one of the quieter habits of time. It preserves what no one intended to make immortal. Move away from the account for a moment and follow another sound. Iron. Not weapon against weapon, something smaller. The world of Walter the Farrier. A household of this size is also a world of horses. Travel between estates depends upon them. Messages depend upon them. Rank is displayed through them. Supplies may move with them. Hooves wear, shoes require attention. The animal beneath the rider belongs to a chain of care that continues even after the rider has gone indoors. Walter's name survives because this work mattered enough to be recorded. Near the places where horses are kept, the atmosphere changes again. The smell is warmer and heavier. Hay, animal breath, leather, damp earth, manure. A horse shifts its weight. Another chews. There is a soft movement that has nothing to do with human rank. For all the sophistication of the castle, much of its life still depends upon muscle, human and animal. Water must be carried. Food must be moved. Wood must arrive near a fire before the fire can warm anyone. A horse must be fed before it can carry a message. Bread must be kneaded before it appears at table. The castle is powerful because so much labor remains almost invisible. Walk back toward the inhabited rooms. The daylight is changing now, not disappearing suddenly, but withdrawing from surfaces. The Wye below loses detail first. Distance becomes simpler. The wooded slopes cease to offer individual branches and become darker masses. Within the ward, doorways deepen in tone. Places touched by fire begin to appear brighter, not because the flames have grown, but because everything beyond them has dimmed. This is the hour when medieval architecture changes character. A window that brought useful light earlier cannot continue doing so. A stair becomes more deliberate. A threshold requires attention. The castle begins to divide into pools of illumination. We should be careful here, because the Middle Ages is often imagined beneath endless wall torches, every corridor burning theatrically. Goodrich is not such a place. Firelight candles and portable lights matter because darkness is real. Beeswax belongs especially to higher status and religious use. Household evidence connects wax with the chapel, while tallow appears within the wider economy of lighting. The difference is not merely one of price. Different flames carry different smells, different smoke, different associations. In the chapel, wax can burn beside devotion. Elsewhere, a humbler light may be enough to see a doorway, a hand a vessel, the few feet of floor ahead. Darkness does not arrive as an enemy. It simply reduces the world. A room that seemed large by day becomes the area touched by flame. Faces appear, then soften toward shadow. Timber above disappears. Corners retreat, and outside the illuminated space, the castle continues without needing to be seen. The chapel offers another kind of enclosure. Giles of Barrington belongs to this part of Joan's household world. So does Ralph Blute, whose role connects chapel service with the practical record keeping of the household. Religion here is not a separate subject waiting for its own chapter. It is woven into time, authority, memory, and ordinary routine. The same household that counts provisions also purchases wax. The same noblewoman whose presence requires enormous quantities of food also maintains clergy. The same stone that protects stored resources encloses prayer. That is how a living medieval world resists our categories. Nothing stays separate for long. A candle is light, expense, devotion, and material. Bread is food, labor, hierarchy, and account. A horse is transport, status, expense, and living warmth. A wall is defense, shelter, architecture, and cold beneath the hand. And the river below is geography until someone needs to cross it, use it, look toward it, or simply hear the valley beyond the walls. The castle grows dimmer. Somewhere a door closes. Somewhere bread remains from the day's work. Somewhere a servant still has something to carry. The kitchens have not yet become quiet. because a large household cannot pass from activity into sleep all at once. Work fades unevenly. One person finishes while another begins a final task. A fire that has served preparation remains hot after the vessel above it is removed. Water still has uses. Surfaces still bear the evidence of labor. And soon the great hall will become something different from what it was earlier. That transformation is one of the strange beauties of medieval domestic space. Rooms are not always assigned a single purpose. Furniture can move. People can move. The meaning of a floor can change with the hour. A place of eating can become a place of rest. A place of administration can become quieter as light disappears. A courtyard busy with crossings can empty until a single movement seems louder than many did before. But we are not there yet. The evening still has weight in it. There are people to feed. There are differences of rank to make visible. There are vessels, benches, bread and drink. There is heat gathering in one part of the castle while cold settles more firmly into another. And above all of it, there is the simple fact that Joan de Valence is here not as a figure in a history book, but as the center of a household that has physically rearranged itself around her presence. More than 7 centuries from now, visitors will stand among broken walls and try to imagine what these spaces once contained. They may look through empty windows at the Wye. They may walk beneath open sky where timber once separated one floor from another. They may touch stone exposed to weather and imagine that medieval life was made entirely of that stone. But tonight the castle refuses to become a ruin for us. The walls are surfaces behind furniture and cloth. The stairs lead somewhere. Doors conceal occupied rooms. The chapel has purpose. The kitchen has heat. The hall is waiting. And when the wind reaches the outer masonry, the people inside do not hear the voice of history. They hear only weather. Perhaps someone looks briefly toward a darkening opening before turning back to work. Perhaps no one does. We will not invent the gesture. We do not need to. The surviving world is already enough. There are 120 lives moving within these walls, more or less, each one carrying some small part of the household through the evening. Some have names that reached us. Most do not, yet anonymity does not make them absent. A loaf moves because hands moved it. A horse is shod because someone bent beside the hoof. A candle burns because someone obtained wax or tallow, prepared a light and carried it where darkness had begun. A fire survives because fuel reached the hearth. A noble household appears effortless only from far away. Come closer, and everything is work. Come closer still, and work becomes sound. The scrape of something wooden against a floor, the subdued crack of burning logs, footsteps crossing stone, a horse shifting somewhere beyond the hall. Voices that we cannot understand from this distance and should not pretend to hear clearly. The castle does not need invented conversation. Its materials are speaking enough. Stone returns footsteps, timber answers pressure, fire settles and breaks. Wind finds openings, and beneath the hill, hidden now by deepening darkness, the River Wye continues around its bend. The last usable natural light is leaving the courtyard. Inside, human light takes its place. Not everywhere. Only where someone has reason to keep darkness away. A flame appears beyond a doorway. Then another farther inside. The great hall is no longer simply a building we have approached from outside. It has begun to draw the household toward it. carrying with it the smell of fire and food, the warmth of gathering bodies, the quiet architecture of rank, and all the small acts of service that must happen before anyone of importance can sit comfortably. And so we move toward that light, while behind us the stones of the inner ward slowly surrender their color to the coming dark. The warmth reaches you before the room fully reveals itself. It does not come evenly. A medieval hall is not filled with a single temperature, but with gradients. Near the fire, cheeks warm and hands loosen. A few paces away, the cold returns through stone and air. Between those two conditions, people arrange themselves according to rank, duty, opportunity, and habit. The hall is gathering, not with a sudden rush, but with accumulation. One servant enters carrying something needed near the tables. Another crosses in the opposite direction. A bench is shifted. A vessel is placed where someone expects to find it. The architecture receives each movement and gives back a quiet echo. The great hall at Goodrich is more than a place to eat. It is where the household becomes visible to itself. Outside, 120 lives may be scattered among kitchens, chambers, stables, service spaces, gatehouse rooms, administrative duties, and errands. Here those different strands begin to draw closer. The distinction between the upper and lower ends of the hall quietly organizes the room. At one end, closer to the more private residential spaces, status gathers around the high table. Farther away, others occupy places suited to their position within the household. Nothing needs to be announced. The room itself teaches everyone where they belong. Wooden tables stand upon trestles. Benches can be moved. The furniture is not permanent architecture that allows the hall to change according to need. A floor that now receives tables and diners can later be cleared again, its social arrangement dissolved until another day calls it back into existence. Firelight moves across the plastered surfaces. The exact decoration of every wall is lost to us, and we should leave what is lost in silence. But the room is not the bare shell seen by later centuries. Lime-washed and plastered surfaces would catch more light than exposed ruins do. Timber, cloth, people and furniture soften the hard geometry of the stone. The effect is modest, not bright, simply inhabited. The smell of food becomes stronger, bread first, then meat, then warmth itself, because heated food changes the air around it. Steam rises where something has recently left a cooking vessel. Fat carries scent farther than grain. Wood smoke moves through the larger background of the room, and beneath all of it is wool. Damp wool drying near warmth. Clean wool, used wool. Cloaks that have carried the weather indoors. The castle has many smells because it has many kinds of life compressed within stone boundaries. Someone arrives from the service side of the hall. The kitchen lies within a practical relationship to this room. Food must be prepared in heat and brought toward diners without crossing unnecessary distance. The service end of a great medieval hall exists because the work of feeding a household is as much spatial as culinary. A meal is not simply food. It is movement. The baker's work enters as bread. The kitchen enters through cooked meat. The buttery enters through drink. The pantry enters through stored bread, vessels, cloth, and the quiet order required to place things where they belong accounts weight behind all of them. Everything that reaches a table has come from somewhere. Everything consumed becomes a quantity that no longer remains in storage. Large households live by constant conversion. Grain becomes bread, wood becomes heat, wax becomes light, oats become movement through horses, money becomes all of them. Perhaps that is why the surviving household accounts feel so alive despite their practical language. They follow transformations. They do not tell us what Joan felt as she sat in Goodrich. They tell us what had to exist for her household to function. And tonight, the functioning is enough. The Countess has come here after the death of her husband. Her position has changed, but not into invisibility. Widowhood for a woman of Joan's rank carries administrative weight. Estates must still be managed. Household servants still travel. Clergy still receive support. Property still produces obligations. Correspondence still moves outward. The hall surrounding her is evidence of that continuing authority. Yet authority is quieter than legend often makes it. There are no trumpets required, no proclamation. Only the fact that dozens upon dozens of people are here, because this household moves when she moves. Bread was prepared because she came. Animals were provisioned because she came. Servants sleep where accommodation can be found because she came. A castle changes population when its noble household arrives. That means even silence has a different density. An empty hall holds air. An occupied hall holds expectations. The meal develops gradually. We should not force a menu onto a specific ordinary night when the records do not give us one. What survives more securely is the wider world of provisioning meat, grain, bread, fish. Ale, wine, eggs, cheese, and other supplies appear within the documented economy of Joan's household. So the table before us need not become a catalogue. It is better to remain with what can be felt. Bread broken, drink poured, a serving vessel lifted, a knife used, hands washed where custom and service require it, a servant waiting for the moment when something should be removed. The distinction between eating and serving is visible in posture. One person sits, another stands, one speaks without needing to move, another moves continually without becoming the center of attention. This is how hierarchy acquires a physical form, not only through titles, but through who remains seated, who waits, who approaches, who withdraws, who carries, and who is permitted to pass through a door into a more private space afterward. The old traveler watches without judgment. Centuries later, we are tempted to organize all of this into systems: aristocracy, service, gender, economy, religion. But no one in the hall is experiencing a diagram. They are experiencing a room, the warmth of a fire against one side of the body, the sound of another bench shifting, the weight of clothing, the taste of drink, the awareness of rank, the fatigue of work, the knowledge that more work waits after the meal. This is enough to fill a life. And slowly the daylight outside diminishes further. The windows no longer function as sources of meaningful illumination. They become boundaries. A dark pane or shuttered opening separates the interior from an increasingly unreadable landscape. The Wye is still below, but now its presence has become conceptual. You know it is there even when you cannot see it. This may have been a familiar medieval experience, landscapes continuing beyond vision. Modern light teaches us to expect the night to remain legible. Roads, windows, streets, and houses continue to outline themselves beneath lamps. Here, darkness erases distance. The castle survives because people make light locally. A candle can reveal a face, but not the valley. A hearth can reveal a table, but not the forest. The night beyond Goodrich becomes immense precisely because human light is small. There is something calming in that smallness. No one needs to illuminate the whole world, only the space immediately necessary, a flame near a table, a light carried toward a chamber, wax in the chapel, a lamp or candle where someone needs to move safely. Beyond that, darkness may remain darkness. The meal continues while the outer world disappears. Voices blend. We do not give them words. Words would be ours. Instead, listen to their shape. One voice closer, another farther away. Occasional laughter perhaps, if the evening allows it, but nothing we can attribute to a specific person. A servant answers an instruction. A vessel touches wood. Footsteps approach from the service end. The hall is full without being loud. Medieval life did not need to be either silent or chaotic. Like all inhabited rooms, it moved between levels of sound. Some moments swell, then quiet returns. Some tasks create noise only while they happen. Then their sound vanishes and another takes its place. This is the rhythm that makes a household breathable. The food arriving from the kitchen carries another world behind it. There, the fire has been larger and the work less ceremonial. Heat belongs to labor. Large cooking spaces exist because many people must be fed. Hearths, fireplaces and ovens are not picturesque decorations. They change the temperature enough to make kitchen work physically demanding even in cold weather. A cook or kitchen servant may move between winter air and intense heat many times. Hands that were cold in the courtyard can become warm too quickly near a fire. Faces redden. Clothing takes in smoke. Moisture dries. Wood becomes ash. Vessels become too hot to touch directly. And food leaves. The kitchen is an engine that continually sends finished work toward the hall. Then empty vessels and remnants come back. What the noble diners experience as supper, the service staff experience as sequence. Prepare, carry, wait, return, clean, prepare again. Even when the principal eating has ended, the work created by it remains. This is one reason the castle cannot simply fall asleep when Joan withdraws. A noble household has an afterlife each evening. Tables still exist after diners rise. Fires remain hot after food is removed. Drink remains to be secured. Objects must be accounted for or returned. Floors receive the traces of occupation. People who served others must eventually find food and rest for themselves. The public part of the evening may finish before the laboring part does. The distinction is important, and within it lies the strange tenderness of ordinary history. Great buildings are often remembered through those who owned them, but they were kept alive by people who finished after everyone else. Their names are less likely to survive. Their work is everywhere. A clean vessel, a closed door, a replenished fire, a horse fed before morning, a bench moved away from the center of the room. Nothing dramatic, everything necessary. One of the lights in the hall has shortened. Its flame sits lower now. The candle does not know that it is measuring time, yet its disappearance makes time visible. Wax or tallow slowly becomes warmth and light, then vanishes. A medieval night is filled with things being consumed. Firewood, candles, food, human energy. The household must constantly replenish what darkness and cold take away. Perhaps this is why storage matters so much in places like Goodrich. A room full of grain is future bread. A stack of fuel is future warmth. A candle not yet burned is future visibility. A barrel is future drink. Hay is future movement. Everything stored is time waiting in material form, and perhaps, without intending to, every castle is built partly against uncertainty. Stone protects, but stores sustain. The towers may discourage an enemy. The pantry answers hunger. The well answers thirst. The stable answers distance. The chapel answers needs that neither stone nor grain can satisfy. The hall, for now, answers the human need to gather. A household of this size cannot remain psychologically united if everyone exists only in separate workspaces. The hall allows rank to organize community. Meals reinforce hierarchy, but they also bring parts of the household into proximity. A servant may see people here who spend the rest of the day elsewhere. A messenger may return from a road. A chaplain may pass between devotional and administrative duties. A knight may be physically close to a baker while occupying a completely different social world. For a brief time, those worlds share heat and air. Then they separate again. The meal begins to loosen, not end, loosen. The room changes before anyone declares it changed. Some movement shifts toward departure. A person of higher rank rises. Others become attentive to that rising. Objects begin to lose their immediate purpose. A vessel no longer needs to remain where it was. A servant can remove something. A table still covered a moment ago begins to look like furniture again. The social arrangement starts to dissolve. Joan will withdraw toward more private accommodation. We cannot identify the exact chamber in which she slept, and the research itself warns us against pretending we can. Goodrich had residential rooms suitable for a noble household, private chambers, fireplaces, garderobes, access separated from the most public circulation. That is enough. We do not need to choose a bed for her that history has not chosen for us. It is enough to know that privacy increases as one moves away from the communal hall. Not modern privacy, not solitude. A countess remains attended. Servants belong to the household's intimate machinery. Clothing, bedding, lights, messages, devotional needs, doors and fires all require hands. The more important the person, the more likely it is that privacy remains surrounded by service. So Joan withdraws from public visibility without disappearing from the household. Her absence from the hall changes the room. The center of gravity shifts. The same architecture now feels different. A high table without its highest status occupant is simply a table. Space depends upon people for meaning. Roger de Pen may still have administrative obligations somewhere within this world. Ralph Bluet may still have records. Giles of Barrington belongs to the chapel and to religious service. John's work with bread does not cease merely because Joan has eaten. Walter's horses do not care that the Countess has withdrawn. The castle continues according to multiple clocks. Rank has one clock, kitchen work another, religious observance another, animals another, fire another, night itself another, and no single one controls the whole place. This is why there can be no precise moment when Goodrich becomes quiet. A quiet arrives unevenly. The great hall grows less crowded. A service room remains active. Someone crosses the courtyard. A horse moves. A guard or porter remains associated with the castle's security. A light continues in the chapel. Somewhere a person who has worked through the meal finally pauses. The transformation of the hall becomes clearer. Movable furniture makes the change possible. Tables can be taken down from trestles or shifted aside. Benches can be moved. Floor space returns. In comparable medieval households, Halls could provide sleeping space for members of the household, though exactly who slept where at Goodrich cannot always be established. The surviving research itself leaves that uncertainty open. So we will do the same. Do not imagine every servant laid in identical rows across this floor. Simply allow the hall to become available for rest. Perhaps some of the household find sleeping places here. Others may use service buildings, chambers, outer structures or accommodation beyond the most prestigious spaces, with a household approaching the population of a small village. The question of sleep is logistical as much as personal. Where can a body lie down? Where can clothing be kept? Where can warmth be found? Where can a servant sleep without blocking someone else's work? The castle's stone boundaries contain more people than its surviving ruined rooms might suggest. That is because medieval household space is flexible. People accept forms of shared accommodation that later centuries may find unfamiliar. Beds themselves can be shared. Chambers can include attendants. A room can serve one purpose by day and another by night. Privacy belongs to degree rather than absolute separation. One can be asleep and still part of a community. The great hall fire has changed. Its energy is lower. Flames that once moved actively around logs now reveal glowing areas beneath darker wood. No need to declare whether this particular hearth will be banked later. Direct Goodrich evidence does not allow us to make that specific claim with confidence. We can simply watch it diminish. The heat near it remains stronger than the heat across the room. Ash gathers. Occasional sparks brighten and vanish. The hall seems larger now that fewer people are speaking. Sound no longer fills its volume. Instead, isolated noises expose the room's size. A footstep travels farther. Wood shifting in the fire becomes noticeable. A door closes and the sound hangs for a moment before dying against walls and timber. The same acoustics existed earlier. We simply could not hear them beneath the household. Silence has not arrived. It has revealed what was always underneath. Outside, the darkness is complete enough that the courtyard must be understood by memory and local light. A person crossing it knows where the stairs are because the castle is familiar. Architecture lived daily becomes bodily knowledge. How many steps? Where a threshold rises, where a passage narrows, where the wall turns, where one must place a hand in darkness. Modern visitors learn a historic building by sight. Its inhabitants learn it by repetition. A servant can move through a familiar passage with far less light than a stranger would require. Feet remember. Hands remember. The body carries a map. And in a castle, that map is vertical. Goodrich rises through stairs and towers. Stone spiral stairs turn within thick masonry. Upper chambers sit above lower rooms. Wall walks exist above the courtyard. Cellars and storage occupy lower levels. The castle is not simply a plan spread across the ground. It is stacked life. Warmth rises. Smoke rises. Voices pass through floors. Someone above can hear movement below. A person carrying a light up a stair causes illumination to appear briefly upon surfaces one turn at a time. Then darkness closes behind them. Follow one such small light, not to invent a particular servant, only to understand the movement. It leaves the hall, passes through a doorway, touches a wall, enters a stair. The steps are stone. The person carrying the light moves slowly enough to see what must be seen, not enough to illuminate the whole shaft. 1 foot, then another. The light turns before the body does. Above, perhaps a chamber is warmer because a fireplace has been used. The air changes upon entering. A thick wall makes even a small room feel enclosed. A shutter or glazed opening separates the inhabitants from the cold outside. The fire gives the chamber a softer center than the hall below. This is the kind of space Joan's rank allows her to inhabit. Not luxurious in the sense that modern comfort understands luxury. Luxurious in terms of access, a private fire, a better bed, textiles, more controlled entry, greater distance from service noise, better light, the possibility of closing a door. These privileges are physical before they are symbolic. They alter how night feels upon the skin. A servant in a colder space and a nobleman beside a fire live through the same winter hour differently. Their experiences are separated by only a few walls. The distinction makes the castle feel almost like several climates joined together. Kitchen heat, hall warmth, cold stair, protected chamber, open courtyard, exposed wall walk, stable warmth, chapel stillness. Every doorway changes the body. That is the living world of Goodrich. And now, somewhere beyond the chamber walls, a quieter flame belongs to devotion. The chapel has not disappeared simply because the principal meal is over. Religion does not wait for daylight. The household's clergy carry continuity between public and private life. Giles of Barrington is not an abstract representative of medieval Christianity. His presence is recorded within Joan's household, part of a real network of people moving with her. Wax used for religious lighting turns the chapel into another island within darkness. The smell is different from the kitchen. No roasting food, no horse, less human traffic, stone and wax. Perhaps textiles and liturgical objects where the records support such a furnished religious space. The quiet here is purposeful, and yet we should resist turning the castle into a monastery. A noble household does not automatically reproduce monastic hours with monastic discipline. Religious time matters, certainly, but domestic life, status, and practical necessity intersect with it. The chapel belongs inside that intersection. Someone can pray and still have accounts to manage. A chaplain belongs to God and to a household payroll. A candle is devotional and purchased. Medieval life does not experience contradiction in this. Material and spiritual worlds touch constantly. Wax burns because faith gives it meaning and economy gives it form. A castle wall protects the altar from weather, just as it protects grain. The same building contains body and soul without needing to separate them into modern categories. The flame in the chapel bends slightly. Air has moved. Perhaps a door opened. Perhaps someone entered. We do not need to know who. The light remains. Outside, higher still, the wall walk lies beneath the night. The difference between chamber and battlement is immediate. Wind has no reason to respect rank. It reaches stone, clothing and exposed skin equally. From here the dark valley is almost without form. The river Wye cannot be followed continuously by sight. At best, where the sky offers enough light, a surface may briefly distinguish itself from land. The surrounding countryside holds few human lights compared with the modern world. A distant fire may exist. A settlement may contain small signs of occupation, but there is no illuminated horizon. Goodrich stands within darkness rather than above a glowing landscape. This makes the sky larger and the castle smaller, for all its towers, walls, and administrative importance. Goodrich occupies only one sandstone height beneath an enormous night. A sentry, porter, or household guard does not need philosophy to feel this. Wind teaches scale, cold teaches the body where it ends. Darkness teaches the eye what it cannot command. Behind the guard, however, human life persists. Light behind an opening, smoke above a roof, the smell of burning wood carried outward, a horse sounding below. The castle from the war walk is no longer a monument. It is shelter, and shelter is always most understandable when one stands outside it. A few steps through wind can make a doorway feel generous. Stone that seemed cold inside now becomes protection from colder air. The wall itself takes on another meaning. Not defense from armies, defense from weather, return from the wall. The stair receives you again. The air becomes stiller, sound changes. A faint warmth accumulates. Below, the great hall continues its slow rearrangement. Some lights have gone. Others remain. A few people still move through it. The tables are no longer the center of the space. The room is becoming something quieter, though not yet sleep. And from somewhere beyond it comes the soft evidence that the kitchen has not finished with the day. The kitchen carries its own kind of darkness, not the darkness of an empty room, but the darkness that gathers around work still being completed. The fiercest heat of supper preparation has passed. What remains is lower, steadier, less urgent. A vessel has been moved from the fire, another waits to be cleaned. Ash gathers where flames were stronger earlier. The air is still warmer here than in the courtyard, and the smell of the day's cooking lingers long after the food itself has gone toward the hall. Smoke has settled into wood and cloth. Fat has left traces on tools and surfaces. Moisture rises from water used for cleaning. People remain because food creates work in both directions. Before the meal, ingredients move toward heat. After the meal, objects come back. Bowls, vessels, knives, serving equipment. Things that were briefly part of ceremony become ordinary objects again the moment they return to the service spaces. The change is gentle but complete. A cup at the high table belongs to rank. The same cup being washed belongs to labor. There is no contradiction. Goodrich depends upon both. The household becomes quieter because tasks are finishing one by one. No bell marks the moment when the kitchen ceases to be busy. A worker simply discovers that there is one thing less to do. A surface is cleared. An object is put away. A remaining fire is attended. Food that must be kept is secured. Waste has somewhere to go. Water is carried where it is needed. And slowly the room releases the people who have filled it. Some of them may have eaten after serving others. Some may still be hungry enough to notice the smell of food more strongly than those who sat at table. Rank shapes appetite differently. The Countess experiences supper as a meal. Someone in service may experience the same hours as work performed in the presence of food. Only afterward does the body become one's own again. Hands that have lifted, carried, cut or cleaned can finally rest. The warmth of the kitchen makes leaving difficult. Beyond its walls, the winter air has not softened. Step into the courtyard and the difference is immediate. Heat disappears from the face first, then from the hands. Stone beneath the feet has surrendered whatever mildness it once held from daylight. Moisture makes cold feel closer. The night air enters cloth gradually, finding places where movement has loosened layers around the wrists or neck. Behind you, the kitchen doorway glows. Ahead, only a few human lights remain. This is what darkness does to architecture. During daylight, the courtyard connected buildings visually. You could look from one range to another, read doors and windows, understand the shape of walls and towers. Now the same courtyard connects them through memory. A person crossing it does not need to rediscover Goodrich each night. They know where they are. They know which wall stands beyond the dark. They know how many steps remain before a doorway. They know where the ground changes beneath the feet. A stranger sees darkness. An inhabitant sees familiarity. And perhaps that is one of the quietest differences between visiting a place and belonging to it. Belonging begins when the body no longer needs the eyes for everything. The castle has become a map carried inside those who live here. A stair is remembered by the angle of its turn, a door by the weight needed to move it, a passage by the change in air, a chamber by its smell, the great hall by its echo, the kitchen by its heat, the stable by the breathing of horses before anyone reaches the door. Follow that breathing. Away from the most prestigious rooms, the animal world continues almost untouched by the fading of human activity. A horse does not understand that the hall has emptied. It understands hay, water, the presence of other horses, the pressure of a wall beside its body, a familiar human approaching. The stable night is built from repetitive sounds. Chewing, a hoof shifting upon the ground, a quiet snort, leather moving where tack has been stored, perhaps the soft disturbance of hay as an animal lowers its head again. Walter the farrier belongs to this world, though there is no reason to place him beside a specific horse at this specific moment. His recorded role is enough. Horseshoes wear because roads are hard. Iron must be shaped because hooves meet those roads. The elegant movement of a noble household across England rests partly on something as ordinary as maintaining the feet of animals. Joan's household has travelled between residences. Its very existence is mobile. Beds, clothing, administrators, servants, clergy, horses, supplies, documents and expectations shift from one estate to another. A castle is therefore not simply occupied, it is activated. When Joan arrives, Goodrich changes. When she leaves, its population and rhythm change again. The stone stays. The household passes through. Perhaps buildings experience time differently from people. A servant measures a stay in weeks of work. A horse measures it in feed and journeys. An account measures it in expenditure. The castle measures it in footsteps. And the walls remember none of them deliberately. They simply endure long enough for traces to accumulate. Return toward the inner ward. The great hall is quieter still. Without the meal to organize it, the room loses some of its hierarchy. The upper end remains architecturally meaningful, certainly, but darkness and fatigue flatten certain distinctions. A bench is only a bench when no one important sits upon it. A floor is only a floor when the day's ceremony has been cleared away. Those who remain within the communal spaces now inhabit the castle differently. The night asks simpler questions than the evening did. Where will you sleep? How warm can you remain? Is there enough light to reach the place where you will lie down? What must still be done before you can close your eyes? We should resist the temptation to answer these questions too precisely. The surviving evidence does not tell us the exact sleeping location of every person in Joan's company. With a household this large, accommodation must have spread through available rooms and service spaces, perhaps beyond the most prestigious core. Some servants in medieval households could sleep communally. Some attendants remained close to those they served. Higher status people had access to chambers and better bedding. But the castle cannot be turned into a modern hotel plan where every person has an assigned room waiting to be reconstructed. Night is more improvised than that. Space is shared. Furniture moves. Bodies fit where the household has room for them. What matters is not certainty about every pallet. What matters is the changing relationship between people and space. The hall that belonged to eating becomes available for rest. The chamber that belonged to privacy becomes a place of sleep. The gatehouse becomes primarily a place of controlled access and watchfulness. The chapel becomes quieter still. The kitchen becomes residual warmth. The stable continues as stable. Each space settles into its nighttime identity. Above the hall, private rooms offer greater protection. Fireplaces in residential chambers give warmth that communal spaces cannot distribute equally. Thick walls hold the room apart from wind, though they cannot erase winter. Doors and shutters reduce drafts. Textiles can make the space feel softer and warmer. A bed in such a chamber is itself architecture on a smaller scale. A raised frame separates the sleeper from the coldest floor. Mattress and bedding separate the body from the frame. Wool and linen create layers. Curtains, where used, make another enclosure within the room. A castle contains chambers. A chamber contains a bed. A bed can contain a warmer world still. The deeper we move into private space, the smaller the protected environment becomes. Outside is England. Inside England is Goodrich. Inside Goodrich is the chamber. Inside the chamber is the bed. And beneath the coverings, finally, a single body keeps its own heat. Perhaps human shelter has always followed this pattern. We build walls around walls, cloth around skin, habits around uncertainty. Joan's rank gives her access to the innermost layers, but even the Countess cannot escape the night entirely. Fire weakens. Candles shorten. Servants eventually withdraw or settle nearby. The stone beyond the textiles remains cold. Darkness collects outside the radius of every flame. Power can rearrange the conditions of night. It cannot abolish night. Somewhere nearby, religious objects belong to another kind of protection. The chapel has become almost still. We do not need to imagine a full monastic sequence imposed upon the household. Goodrich is not an abbey. Yet Christianity structures Joan's world too deeply to disappear when daily business becomes quiet. A chaplain is part of her household. Wax is purchased for devotional use. An image of the Blessed Virgin appears within the material history connected with Joan's religious patronage. Prayer exists beside administration. A person can worry about provisions and salvation within the same hour. The medieval mind has no reason to separate these concerns as sharply as ours might. The same hand can touch money, parchment, bread, and a devotional object. The same candle can be an expense recorded by a clerk and an offering of light before an altar. The same silence can be practical and sacred. In the chapel, stone surfaces receive a much smaller flame than the hall received from its hearth. That smallness changes perception. The eye does not see architecture all at once. It finds fragments, the edge of an altar, a fold of cloth, the pale surface of a wall, a hand, the lower part of an image, then shadow. Nothing needs to be fully visible to be present. Faith itself often exists in such partial illumination. Enough light for attention, not enough light for mastery. A draught passes through the chapel and the flame responds. It leans, straightens, leans again. Somewhere far outside, wind has crossed the Wye Valley, reached the promontory, moved around the castle's stone mass, and found a narrow path into this room. The flame becomes the visible end of an invisible journey. Wind is always arriving from somewhere we cannot see. Perhaps this is why old buildings seem so alive at night. Air moves through them. Wood contracts. Fire settles. Doors answer pressure. A distant sound becomes impossible to place. The building does not sleep in the same way its inhabitants do. Goodrich continues making small noises. A timber underload adjusts. A horse strikes the ground once. Something metallic shifts. The fire gives a muted crack. Then nothing. The listener begins to notice intervals. Earlier, silence was what happened between sounds. Now sound is what happens between silences. The change is almost imperceptible. Deep night grows through absence. Fewer voices, fewer footsteps, fewer lights. The courtyard now belongs mostly to those who have a reason to cross it. That reason matters. A servant carrying something to a chamber, someone attending an animal, a person connected with security moving near the gatehouse, perhaps clergy or household members moving for religious purpose. There is no leisure in wandering simply to enjoy the architecture. The cold discourages unnecessary movement. Darkness makes every journey more deliberate. Cross the courtyard again. The gatehouse stands ahead. Its strength feels different at night. By day, defenses announce wealth and authority. At night, they become physical reassurance. The entrance is controllable. Heavy doors can close the outside world away. A portcullis exists within the gatehouse system. Stone vaulting surrounds the passage. Guard spaces belong to the architecture. The exact nightly sequence of keys, portcullis movements, and watch changes cannot safely be reconstructed in every detail, and there is no need to manufacture ceremony around them. It is enough to understand the principle. Access to Goodrich is no longer casual once darkness has settled. A household must know who belongs inside. A stranger arriving late is different from a servant crossing the courtyard. A messenger has a reason to request entry. The porter and those responsible for the gate exist at the boundary between trust and uncertainty. This boundary is one of the oldest human ideas built into architecture. Inside, outside, known, unknown, sheltered, exposed. The gatehouse gives those oppositions weight. A thick door is not merely wood. At night it becomes a decision made physical. Beyond it lies the road descending into darkness. Within it lie sleeping people. The castle's defensive power tonight exists largely so that those people do not need to think about defense. True security is often quiet. The walls matter most when no one is testing them. Climb upward through the gatehouse. Stone stairs turn tightly. A small light would reveal the steps nearest the feet, and little more. The wall is close enough to touch. The central newel gives the stair its curve. Movement cannot be hurried comfortably in darkness. Higher. The air grows colder. A final opening approaches. Then wind. The wall walk. The transition strips away the intimacy of the interior immediately. Here the castle meets the night without mediation. No hanging softens air. No enclosed bed keeps warmth close. No kitchen fire changes the temperature. Stone, wind-clothing body. That is enough. The battlements divide the horizon into pieces. Beyond them, the valley is mostly an absence. No modern road carries a line of headlights. No town spreads an orange glow into clouds. Human occupation survives in isolated points where fire or lamp exists, if they can be seen at all. Most of the world has returned to darkness. The sky, therefore, does not begin far above. It begins almost at the walls. The distinction between land and sky may be more obvious than the details within either. Clouds move as darker or lighter masses. If stars are visible, they belong to a night less interrupted by human light than ours. The guard who stands here does not need to think of astronomy to notice them. They are simply part of visibility, part of weather, part of orientation, part of night. Below, the Wye follows its course unseen or only partly visible. The river makes no effort to announce itself to the castle. It continues. It passed beneath this height before William de Valence rebuilt Goodrich. It will pass beneath the ruins after roofs collapse centuries later. Human beings organize time through inheritance, reigns, marriages, deaths. Rivers ignore those divisions. Perhaps that is why water can make power feel temporary. A noble family builds walls. A river goes around a bend. One action becomes history. The other simply continues. The century has no need for such thoughts. Cold is enough to return attention to the body. A hand moves beneath a cloak. Weight shifts from one foot to the other. The wall beneath is hard. Wind moves across the face. Warmth survives mainly beneath layers of wool. Then, perhaps after some time, movement resumes along the wall. A patrol does not need drama. One section of rampart, a tower, another stretch of wall, the gatehouse, a stair downward. The practical purpose is awareness. To remain awake, to notice change. The night guard lives in a world opposite to sleep. While others allow attention to dissolve, the watchman protects attention. Every distant sound must be heard. Every unusual light might matter. Every familiar noise can eventually be ignored. This creates another kind of intimacy with the castle. A sleeping person knows a room. A guard knows what the castle sounds like when nothing is wrong. That knowledge is more valuable than constant fear. A horse moving is normal. Wind against a shutter is normal. Timber settling is normal. A servant briefly crossing below may be normal. The art of watchfulness is learning which sounds do not require alarm. So the night remains peaceful not because nothing moves, but because movement remains familiar. Descend again. The difference in temperature feels generous. The interior is still cold, but comparison makes it seem warm. Pass through the gatehouse and into the courtyard. One light has disappeared since we last crossed. Another remains. The castle is reducing itself to essentials. People, fire, security, prayer, animals, sleep. All the complexity of daylight has not vanished. It has folded inward. Accounts can wait. Construction can wait. Most repairs can wait. The business of the estate can wait. Night temporarily narrows responsibility. Even the powerful must eventually stop deciding things. Perhaps sleep is the one daily condition in which hierarchy becomes less visible. A countess under fine bedding and a kitchen servant beneath coarse wool remain separated by enormous differences of comfort and status. Yet both eventually become still. Breathing replaces speech. Eyes close. Muscles release work. The world continues without permission from either of them. This is not equality. It is simply biology, and biology can be strangely indifferent to rank. Return to the hall. Its remaining warmth is faint now. If people rest here, their presence changes the acoustics again. Cloth, Bedding and bodies absorb some of the sound that an empty hall would return. The floor has become personal territory in small temporary ways. A cloak placed here, a bundle there, a space chosen close enough to warmth, but not where someone must pass. No need to arrange these sleepers into a scene history has not recorded. Allow uncertainty to remain visible. Somewhere in the household, servants are sleeping. Somewhere attendants remain close enough to noble chambers to be called if necessary. Somewhere guards stay awake. Somewhere clergy rest. Somewhere a horse still chews. This is more truthful than pretending to know every room. The sound of breathing gradually joins Goodrich. Not one person's breathing. The idea of many bodies at rest within stone. The castle's population has not disappeared because it has become quiet. It has become heavier. Still, bodies occupy space differently from working bodies. They make rooms seem fuller. Darkness is no longer empty. It is inhabited by sleep. A candle near a private chamber burns lower. Its flame creates a shallow bowl of light beneath it. Wax softens near the wick. The upper part of the room is almost gone from sight. A wooden chest remains a shape. Textiles become areas of darkness against lighter wall. A doorway is visible mainly because the light changes there. Someone sleeping behind bed curtains may hear almost none of the castle beyond the chamber. Another person only a few walls away hears every footstep. Comfort includes control over sound. The wealthy can purchase distance from disturbance, but not complete distance. A door opens somewhere. The sound moves through stone. A step follows, then another. Perhaps someone needs the garderobe. The castle's sanitation is built into its architecture. Chutes pass through or along walls, allowing bodily waste to leave living spaces without requiring anyone to journey outside the castle entirely. This is not glamorous history. It is also not optional history. Every civilization eventually meets the body. Food enters, waste leaves. People wash, clothing becomes dirty, water is carried. Bedding must remain usable. The castle is a system for managing the ordinary needs of bodies as much as it is a statement of lordship. Stone grandeur surrounds digestion. Perhaps architecture becomes more human the moment we remember this. A garderobe in a private range tells us that the person who commissioned these walls cared not only about appearing powerful, but about not walking across a freezing courtyard whenever nature called. Comfort has always been practical before it becomes beautiful. The person returns from the latrine. A door closes. The brief disturbance ends. Deep night continues. We will not divide sleep into a universal first sleep and second sleep, because the evidence does not allow that pattern to be imposed confidently upon everyone here. Instead, let sleep remain irregular in the way human sleep often is. Someone wakes because of cold. Someone turns beneath blankets. Someone accustomed to noise does not stir when a horse sounds. Someone who must wake for duty sleeps lightly. A servant near a noble chamber remains attentive even while resting. A guard does not sleep at all during his watch. One household contains many different nights. That may be more interesting than any single pattern. The countess's night is not the baker's. The baker's is not the farrier's. The farrier's is not the chaplain's. The chaplain's is not the gatekeeper's. Yet all are enclosed by Goodrich. One architecture, many experiences. The wind rises briefly. You hear it before you feel anything. It moves around the exterior walls and finds the openings where air can pass. A shutter holds. A flame responds somewhere unseen. The sound reaches one room as a faint pressure and another as a narrow whistle. Outside, exposed on the wall walk, the same wind would be much stronger. Inside, it becomes evidence of weather rather than weather itself. Shelter turns forces into sounds. Rain upon a roof becomes rhythm. Wind against a shutter becomes pressure. Cold outside becomes a draft beneath a door. The building translates nature into something human bodies can endure. This may be the deepest purpose of architecture, not grandeur. Translation, to turn weather into sound, darkness into interior, distance into doorway, danger into wall. A castle simply performs that translation on an unusually monumental scale. The chapel is nearly dark now. The hall is nearly dark. Private chambers hold only what light is still required. The kitchen has fallen far quieter than when we last stood there. Move toward it once more. The great heat has ebbed. Stone near a hearth may still retain some warmth. Ash lies where wood was transformed. Tools wait for another day. A kitchen after work has a peculiar stillness because everything in it suggests motion that has stopped. The oven will be used again. The hearth will be used again. Bread will be kneaded again. Water will be carried again. Nothing here feels final. It is paused. Tomorrow is already hidden inside the objects. John the baker will have work because the household will still need bread. Walter will have work because horses will still have hooves. Ralph Blute will have work because expenditure and administration will continue. Giles of Barrington will still belong to the religious life of the household. Joan will still be countess when she wakes. The machinery of rank and labour has only been suspended by sleep. Outside the kitchen, the courtyard lies black beneath the surrounding buildings. Above it, the castle walls cut their shapes against the sky. No ruin, no romantic emptiness, roofs intact, doors closed, timber floors carrying sleeping bodies, stores waiting below, a well descending into darkness, garderobes built into walls, stairs turning upward, the gatehouse holding the boundary. The old keep standing within the newer castle like one century enclosed by another, and beneath all of this the sandstone promontory descends toward the unseen river. Listen, not for something dramatic, for what remains when almost everyone has stopped. The low presence of wind, a distant animal, perhaps water carried faintly from the valley when the conditions allow it. A tiny movement within timber, the quiet of people sleeping. Nothing is asking to be remembered. That is what makes the moment beautiful. The great monuments of history often seem to know that they will survive. This night does not. No one has arranged it for us. No one has preserved the exact shape of the darkness. It simply happened. Once, among thousands of other nights, and then it disappeared. Only fragments remained. Accounts. Stone. Names. Food quantities. Architectural scars. A chapel. A well. A stair. Enough for us to come close, but never enough to possess the moment completely. Perhaps the spaces history leaves empty are not failures. Perhaps they are invitations to remain humble. We can know that Joan was here. We can know that her household was large. We can know something of those who served her. We can know what the castle contained. We can know what food entered its economy. We can know where fireplaces, stairs and garderobes belonged. But we cannot know who dreamed tonight, and we should be grateful for that boundary. Some part of every human life deserves to remain unrecorded. The night holds those parts gently. Goodrich stands above the Wye, full of sleeping lives that will never know our names either. The darkness between us is 7 centuries deep, and still, for a little while, the same things are understandable. Cold, warmth, fatigue, shelter, the comfort of lying down after work, the relief of a door closed against weather, the knowledge that someone else remains awake while you sleep, the quiet persistence of water below a hill, the way a fire becomes embers, the way a room changes when voices stop. Time has changed almost everything surrounding those sensations. It has not changed the sensations themselves. The courtyard remains still. Above it, somewhere along the wall, the watch continues. Inside, fires settle lower, and in the deepest part of the night, Goodrich is no longer a fortress waiting for history. It is simply a home full of sleeping people, while the hours pass unnoticed around them. The hours do not announce themselves. No clock face waits in the darkness. No glowing numbers divide the night into exact portions. Time inside Goodrich is felt through changes that are smaller and more physical. A fire sinks lower. A candle shortens. The cold deepens in rooms without heat. A guard's watch becomes longer simply because the body begins to feel it. Someone asleep shifts beneath wool. Someone awake notices that the castle has grown quieter still. This is how the night moves, not by minutes, by conditions. The deepest darkness settles first upon the places that no longer need light. A storage room, a passage rarely crossed, a stair between sleeping spaces, the edge of the courtyard, the upper parts of walls where no one stands. Human illumination retreats from the architecture until the castle seems much larger than the inhabited portions of it. Most of Goodrich exists unseen now. Yet nothing has vanished. The well remains in the courtyard. The great hall remains behind its doors. The kitchen hearth remains beneath ash. The chapel still occupies its place among the domestic ranges. The older keep rises where it has risen through generations. The gatehouse holds its position above the entrance. Stone does not need to be visible in order to continue being stone. Perhaps that is what darkness teaches better than daylight. Presence without proof. You know the wall is there because you touched it earlier. You know the stair turns because your feet remember. You know the river bends beneath the hill even though the valley has disappeared. Night asks memory to do the work that sight performed before. And somewhere within the sleeping household, memory has another form. A servant wakes before meaning to. For a moment there is only darkness. Then the body remembers where it is. The room, the floor, the direction of the doorway, the sleeping forms nearby. No alarm, no confusion. Just the small adjustment required when waking in a place deeply known. Perhaps the cold reached through bedding. Perhaps another person moved. Perhaps a sound travelled through timber. We cannot know. There is no need to know. The waking itself is enough. The body turns, cloth shifts, then stillness returns. Elsewhere, another person never woke. The household remains united by architecture, while each individual travels through a different private night. Some dream, some sleep heavily, some wake often, some work, some wait, some listen. This is the invisible diversity of a sleeping castle. The walls contain more experience than any account could ever record, and yet the accounts tell us enough to understand what morning will require. Food again, animals again, messages again, fire again, religious life again, administration again, The entire machine waits on the other side of darkness. For now, however, it is suspended. Ralph Blute's records can remain unwritten for a few more hours. John's bread can remain unbaked for a few more moments. Walter's horses require only the ordinary attentions of night. Giles of Barrington need not fill the chapel with voice. Joan's household rests inside the pause. The stillness does not mean nothing is happening. Cold is entering slowly. Ash is cooling. Wax is hardening where it has run. Moisture gathers where warm air meets colder surfaces. A horse breathes into stable darkness. Wind changes direction beyond the walls. The River Wye continues. Night is full of processes too slow to sound like events. This may be one reason sleep and history resemble each other. Most change happens quietly. Kingdoms do not always fall with noise. Stone does not always collapse during battle. Timber decays grain by grain. Families disappear name by name. Languages shift word by word. A castle becomes a ruin through countless small losses that no single person witnesses completely. But Goodrich is not losing anything tonight. Not yet. Tonight the castle is still being maintained. Its roofs are whole. Its chambers function. Its stairs lead to occupied floors. Its windows belong to rooms with shutters, and in higher status spaces, glazing where appropriate. Its walls have purpose. Its people expect tomorrow. The most ordinary thing about the past is that those living inside it do not know what comes next. This protects the night from drama. No one needs to sense the future. No one looks at the great hall and mourns its eventual ruin. No one touches the gatehouse and imagines centuries of visitors passing through after its defensive importance has faded. The castle is simply present. There is peace in that ignorance. Perhaps there always has been. The wind brushes the upper masonry. A small sound enters one chamber through an opening and disappears. Then another interval of silence. The watch remains the most wakeful part of the castle. To guard a sleeping household is to live temporarily in a different world from everyone inside it. The guard's task is built around continuity. Nothing must change without being noticed. The gate should remain secure. The familiar landscape should remain familiar, even when mostly unseen. The sounds below should remain ordinary. The guard is not waiting for danger so much as confirming its absence. This is quieter work than the language of defense usually suggests. The architecture of Goodrich contains portcullis grooves, heavy entrances, thick masonry, and protected passages. All of these features were designed for moments of violence. Yet almost every night they perform their purpose without violence ever arriving. The strongest defensive structure is successful precisely when nothing happens. No assault, no alarm, no sudden gathering of armed men, just the ordinary passing of hours. A war walk under cold air, a gate below, a sleeping household beyond, strength serving rest. The idea is almost gentle. Farther down, where the gatehouse meets the inner ward, the air is calmer. The stone passage has stored some of the day's temperatures, but now belongs fully to the night. Any person moving through it would feel the difference between sheltered cold and open cold. A castle is not warm or cold in a single way. It is a sequence of temperatures. A chamber with a fire, a corridor without one, a stair close to exterior masonry, a kitchen still holding residual heat, a cellar whose cold is steady, a courtyard exposed to sky, a stable warmed partly by animals, a bed made warm by a sleeping body. Each space teaches the skin where it has entered. Imagine moving from one to another without seeing much. The body knows before the eyes do. Warmth against the cheek, a cooler draft around the ankles, the smell of wood smoke, then stone, then animal, then wax. Senses become geography. The castle can almost be navigated by smell alone. Near the service spaces, traces of supper remain. Bread, fat, smoke, damp cloth. Near horses, leather and hay. Near the chapel, wax and the quieter air of a room less saturated by food and labor. Near the hall, human warmth has left its own faint presence beneath smoke and timber. The smells overlap at thresholds. No room exists entirely by itself. A servant carrying a cloak brings weather into a chamber. A person leaving the stable carries horse and leather into the courtyard. Smoke follows clothing. Food follows hands. The castle's spaces move inside its people. There is no clean border between one atmosphere and another. That too makes it alive. The courtyard seems almost empty now. The well is a dark absence within the darkness. Water below stone. Stored depth. In daylight, the well is practical architecture. At night, it becomes more mysterious simply because depth cannot be seen. Yet those who live here do not need mystery. They need water. Again, the ordinary world resists romance. The well is not a symbol to them. It is supply, a necessity built into the center of defended life. Without water, stone means little. Without food, walls mean little. Without fuel, chambers mean little. Without people, Goodrich is only masonry. Power is always more dependent than it appears. A great castle depends upon humble things, buckets, grain, wood, iron hands, animals, sleep. The countess may command a household, but the household must still wake tomorrow and perform work. No title exempts anyone from the needs of the body. Even authority depends on breakfast. The thought is almost enough to make history smile. But the old traveller only watches. There is nothing to explain. The world demonstrates itself quietly. A faint change has begun outside, not light. Not yet, only a thinning. The darkness no longer feels infinitely deep in the same way. Perhaps clouds have shifted. Perhaps the sky has changed almost imperceptibly. Perhaps this is only the mind growing accustomed to night. There is no reason to hurry toward dawn. The hours before first light are still part of darkness, and in some ways this period may feel colder than what came before. The fires are weaker. Bodies have been still for longer. Stone has had more time to release warmth. The landscape beyond the walls holds winter quietly. A person awake now may pull wool closer. A guard may move more simply to create heat. An animal shifts. Cold makes small actions necessary, nothing dramatic. A hand beneath an arm, shoulders lifted, feet repositioned, breath visible where air allows it. Then waiting again. In a private chamber, the difference is softer. Bedding holds warmth. Curtains, if drawn, reduce moving air around a sleeper. A low fire may have left residual heat in the stone around it, though no specific overnight fire. Tending routine should be imposed where the evidence does not allow it. The chamber is not comfortable by modern standards, yet comfort is relative to what waits beyond the door. A few degrees. A layer of cloth, less wind, a raised bed. These differences matter enormously to the human body. Luxury often begins not with abundance, but with protection from discomfort. The elite chamber demonstrates that truth, warmth where others have less, privacy where others share, light where others accept darkness, space where others fit themselves around work. Joan's status can be understood without crown or ceremony, simply by asking what the night allows her to avoid. She need not sleep where servants sleep. She need not remain close to the coldest draughts. She can withdraw from the hall. She can have attendants. She can possess textiles and bedding of higher quality. She can inhabit a room whose design includes fireplace and garderobe access. Privilege appears in temperature, in distance, in silence, in not needing to cross the courtyard unless necessary, and still the night outside her chamber remains the same night experienced by everyone else. Winter holds the whole castle. The difference lies in how much architecture, cloth and labor stand between winter and the body. Somewhere lower in the household, another sleeping place has no such layers. A wool blanket may be enough. A cloak may serve more than one purpose. A shared room may retain some human warmth because bodies lie closer together. There may be less privacy, yet perhaps less cold than an empty chamber would hold. Human beings create climate simply by occupying space. A crowded room warms differently from an empty one. A sleeping hall sounds different from an empty hall. The castle's population changes its physical environment by existing. This is one reason the ruin cannot teach us everything. A ruin lacks breath. It lacks body heat. It lacks smoke. It lacks wet clothing drying. It lacks doors being closed. It lacks animals. It lacks food. The ruin preserves architecture but loses atmosphere. To return to 1296, one must restore not only walls, but metabolism. Goodrich is alive because things are being consumed and replenished. Energy moves through it, even during sleep. Breathing, cooling, warming, digesting, dreaming, waiting. The castle is not still, it is slow. The difference matters. A light appears briefly in a passage. Someone is awake now, not necessarily because morning has begun. Night work continues when needed. The source of the movement remains unimportant. What matters is what the light does. It narrows the wall into visibility, reveals a doorway, makes iron briefly shine, touches a plastered surface, then vanishes around a corner. For several seconds afterward, the darkness seems darker. The eye had adjusted. Then light disturbed it. Then absence returns. Medieval darkness is not a continuous condition. It is repeatedly interrupted by small human lights. Each interruption matters precisely because it is temporary. A modern room is often illuminated until someone decides to turn it off. Here darkness is the default. Light is work. A candle must be made, purchased, carried, protected from draught, replaced. A flame, therefore, carries effort within it. Perhaps that is why a single candle can feel more valuable than a brightly lit hall. Scarcity sharpens attention. The chapel may still hold one of the most meaningful lights in Goodrich. Wax before an altar is not merely practical. It belongs to devotion and status. The household's investment in religious life survives in its personnel and expenditures. Giles of Barrington belongs to this continuing sacred presence. Ralph Blute moves between chapel service and the practical world of record. Their roles remind us that religion and administration coexist within the same household. Faith has paperwork. Prayer has expense. Devotion requires materials. The spiritual world has weight, wax, cloth, books, images, architecture, human time. A chapel is maintained because belief itself becomes part of the household's economy. This does not diminish faith. It makes faith visible. Something believed deeply enough changes where money goes. It changes which people travel with the Countess. It changes which room remains important even when the great hall grows quiet. It changes the rhythm of days. A castle chapel, therefore, reveals something that defensive walls cannot. What people fear is outside. What people value may be inside. And one of those values is continuity beyond the body. Perhaps this becomes stronger after death. William de Valence is gone. Joan remains. Widowhood places absence inside the household. We should not invent her private grief. We do not know how it felt in this specific night, but we know that death has changed her legal and social position. Her husband no longer moves through the castle. She does. The estates now require her authority in another form. The household follows her. The castle receives her. There is a quiet truth here that needs no emotional reconstruction. Death changes administration as surely as it changes affection. One person's absence rearranges rooms, documents, property, movement and rank. History often enters everyday life this way, not as a battle, as an empty place at a table, as a signature that must now come from someone else, as a household that continues because it has no choice but to continue. Life reorganizes around absence. The castle does not stop. Bread still must be made. Animals still must be fed. The chapel still receives devotion. The river still moves. Perhaps continuity is one of the gentlest forms of endurance. Not triumph, not forgetting, just morning eventually arriving because morning arrives. And although morning has not yet come, hints of preparation begin before light. Some kinds of work must precede the day. The household cannot wake simultaneously. Someone will always rise before someone else. Fires that need rekindling or strengthening. Kitchen tasks, animals, water, doors, religious preparation. The exact sequence for Goodrich cannot be reconstructed minute by minute, and we should not force one. Instead, feel the castle becoming slightly less asleep. Not awake, less asleep. A sound from the service range. Then nothing. A movement near the stable. Then quiet. Someone crossing the courtyard with purpose. Then emptiness again. Night begins to loosen its hold through isolated actions. The first workers do not end the darkness. They simply work inside it. There is something deeply old about labor before dawn. The body moving while the sky remains unchanged. Hands beginning because the task must be ready for others later. This is the hidden foundation of every comfortable morning. Someone has always been awake first. At Goodrich, that truth is multiplied by the size of the household. A countess may rise into a prepared world because others rise into an unprepared one. The distinction is almost the definition of service, to wake before another person so that their waking will be easier. Fire ready, food progressing, horse prepared, room attended, message waiting. Door controlled, the early worker shapes the day before the person of higher rank enters it. This kind of power is rarely named as power, yet it changes experience. The household depends on it. The first kitchen activity begins quietly. No roaring supper fires yet. No crowded service. Only the restoration of usefulness. A place that became still must become functional again. Ash is no longer simply the end of fire. It becomes something to manage. Fuel waits to become heat. Water waits to become part of cooking or cleaning. Stored grain waits to become food. The room holds possibilities before the workers activate them. The smells are subdued at first. Cold ash, old smoke, stored food, damp stone. Then gradually a fresher warmth enters. A small fire becomes stronger. Its first light is more orange than the coming sky. The kitchen sees morning before the courtyard does. Not because daylight has arrived, because work has. This is how civilization often begins each day. Not with sunrise, with somebody making fire. John the baker belongs to the coming hours. Bread has to exist before the household expects it. The exact timing of every loaf cannot be known, but his role tells us enough. Flour, water, hands, heat, repeated work. The smell that filled the castle yesterday will return because hunger returns. There is comfort in the repetition. Bread does not become boring because it is daily. Daily things become the structure of life. The extraordinary depends upon the ordinary, repeating successfully. A feast requires more food. A journey requires more horses. A noble household requires more labor, but the basic actions remain ancient. Need, carry, heat, pour, clean, wait. A baker in 1296 understands these verbs through the body. The body remembers proportions, texture, resistance, heat, readiness. Skill often lies below language. Perhaps John does not need to think consciously about every movement. Practice has made some of the work automatic. This is another kind of memory carried in muscle, like the servant who knows the stair in darkness, like Walter reading the condition of a hoof, like a guard knowing whether a sound belongs to normal night. Knowledge in this castle is not stored only in books or accounts. It is stored in hands, and hands begin moving before sunrise. The stable slowly answers. Horses detect change through sound and routine. A human presence alters their attention. One head lifts, an animal shifts, hay moves. Tack will matter later. The farrier's work may matter when iron requires attention. Travel may happen, messages may leave. Estate business may continue beyond these walls. The castle is preparing to reconnect with the landscape. During the deepest night, Goodrich felt sealed from the world. Soon roads will exist again. Fields will exist again. The river will become visible again. Distance will return. Daylight does not merely illuminate things. It restores relationships between them. Castle and village, castle and road, castle and river, castle and field, castle and horizon. At night, these relationships become invisible. At dawn, they reappear. But dawn still waits beyond the eastern darkness. The courtyard remains mostly black. Only now there are signs that blackness will not last forever. The sky above one wall is fractionally different. Not brighter enough to see by, just less complete. The battlements begin to separate from the sky with a little more certainty. A tower that was only mass becomes outline. The keep finds an edge. The roofs return first as silhouettes. Architecture emerges from night from the top downward. The highest parts meet the changing sky before the lower courtyard receives anything. A guard upon the wall notices this before a sleeper below. The horizon belongs first to those already awake. There is no sunrise yet, only the promise that darkness is becoming finite. Cold remains, wind remains. The castle remains mostly asleep. Inside the hall, bodies that have rested there still lie beneath coverings. In private chambers, the night has not ended simply because someone in the kitchen has begun working. Different parts of Goodrich now occupy different times. The kitchen approaches morning. The wall walk senses dawn. The bedchamber remains in night. The stable begins to stir. The chapel waits between prayer and silence. The courtyard is still darkness. One castle. Several hours at once. Perhaps time is always like this. We imagine everyone sharing the same moment because a clock tells us they do. But a person beginning work and a person still dreaming do not inhabit the same hour emotionally. Goodrich makes that difference visible. The early worker feels beginnings. The sleeper feels continuation. The guard feels relief or simply endurance. The horse feels routine. The fire feels nothing and transforms anyway. Another faint light moves toward the service spaces. The castle is beginning to breathe more deeply. Not yet awake, but preparing. The pause is ending gradually. Soon footsteps will multiply. Soon fires will strengthen. Soon water will move. Soon voices will return. Soon the gate will belong once more to the world beyond it. Soon the Wye will emerge beneath the castle. But for a little longer, the darkness holds the lower ward, and the first hidden work of morning continues beneath a sky that has only just begun to remember the light. The first pale light does not enter the courtyard all at once. It gathers above the walls. At first, the change is almost impossible to separate from imagination. The sky behind one tower becomes less black. Then the upper edges of stone gain definition. Crenellations that had merged with darkness begin to stand apart from it. The roof lines return. The keep becomes more than a mass. Still the ground remains dim. The castle wakes from the top downward. A guard upon the wall sees the change before most of those below. The valley is still hidden. The river is still mostly unseen. But the night has begun to release its hold. Within the service spaces, human work is already ahead of the light. A fire has strengthened. A vessel has been moved. Water has begun another journey through the household. The smell of cold ash is slowly replaced by fresher smoke, then warmth, then the first hints of food. The kitchen is no longer merely recovering from the previous evening. It is becoming useful again. This transformation is one of the most reliable rhythms in a great household. Night reduces the castle. Morning expands it. Rooms that required only darkness and sleep begin to acquire purpose again. A kitchen becomes a kitchen. A stable becomes part of travel. A chapel becomes a place where the day can be acknowledged. A hall becomes available for gathering and administration. The gatehouse begins to reconnect the household to the world outside. Goodrich does not wake because someone has declared a new day. It wakes because tasks become necessary. The first work creates the morning. John the baker belongs somewhere within that returning rhythm. His name has traveled farther through time than almost any ordinary sound he ever made. We do not know the exact shape of his morning, nor need we pretend to. But his role tells us something essential. Bread must arrive before hunger becomes inconvenient. The household does not wait until everyone is awake before beginning to prepare what everyone will need. This means the baker's morning begins inside another person's night. Flour is handled while chambers remain dark. Heat is built while the hall remains quiet. Hands work before those who will eat the result have risen. A loaf is one of the simplest examples of invisible service. By the time it reaches a table, most of its history has disappeared. The grain has already been ground, moved, measured, mixed, shaped, heated, carried. Only the finished bread remains visible. The labor retreats behind the object. Much of noble life works this way. What reaches Joan is the final surface of an enormous chain. A room warmed before she enters. A horse prepared before she rides. A message already carried. Food already cooked. A chapel already made ready. Power often appears effortless because effort happens elsewhere. Goodrich makes that effort spatially visible if one walks slowly enough. There are always rooms behind rooms, hands behind objects, people behind comfort. The growing fire throws light onto the kitchen walls. For a little longer, this fire is brighter than the sky. Then the balance begins to change. Natural light slowly replaces what flame had done alone. A doorway becomes visible without needing a candle near it. The shapes of vessels separate from the shadows. The floor shows its surface more clearly. The world returns by degrees. Outside, a servant crossing the courtyard no longer moves through complete darkness. The well appears first as a shape, then the stones around it. The lower parts of walls remain dim, but their surfaces begin to carry color. Goodrich is built from local stone, whose warm tones daylight will soon reveal again. At night, every stone was nearly the same color. Morning restores difference: red, brown, pale plaster, dark timber, iron, wool. The eye receives variety again. Perhaps this is why dawn has always felt like recovery. It does not create the world. It returns detail. The courtyard now shows signs of the night: moisture, cold surfaces, areas where mud or dampness have collected. The evidence of footsteps that were invisible while they were being made. Morning often reveals what darkness concealed. A person who crossed the courtyard hours ago left no memory in our eyes. The ground may remember longer. This is the same principle by which archaeology eventually remembers whole civilizations. People disappear. Surfaces retain disturbance. A foundation, a socket, a stain, a discarded object, a layer of ash. A building can become a document when enough time has passed. But no one in Goodrich is thinking archaeologically. The courtyard is simply a courtyard that needs to be crossed. Someone moves toward the stable. The horses have already sensed the increase in activity. Animals often recognize a household's routine through cues smaller than human speech: a latch, a footstep, a familiar smell, the sound of feed, an approaching person. One horse lifts its head, another shifts toward where food is expected. Breath moves into the cold air. Hay rustles. The stable possesses its own morning light, muted and enclosed. For the people responsible for these animals, there is work before travel can become possible. A noble household's mobility begins long before a rider appears. Feed, water, inspection, tack, shoes. The ordinary preparation of bodies that will carry other bodies. Walter's work as farrier belongs to this continuing system. Not every morning requires a horseshoe, but every journey depends upon someone knowing when one does. Skill is often the ability to notice wear before failure, a loosened shoe, an uneven movement. Iron that no longer sits correctly. The farrier works close to the ground while noble decisions happen above him. Yet a damaged hoof can stop a messenger more effectively than a closed road. The great world is always vulnerable to small practical things: a broken strap, a lost key, wet firewood, a lame horse, spoiled grain. History likes to remember armies and treaties. Daily life survives through maintenance. The sky has lightened enough now that the surrounding landscape begins to separate itself from darkness. The first forms beyond the walls are not details but layers. A ridge, a slope, the suggestion of woodland, then the Wye. The river returns not as a bright ribbon, but as a changing tone below the castle. Some parts catch more of the sky, other parts remain dark. The bend reappears slowly. Water that continued unseen all night now becomes visible again without having altered its course. The castle seems to reconnect with the valley. During darkness, Goodrich felt almost self-contained. Now the outside world returns. Fields, roads, woodland, settlement, distance. The scale of the castle changes when the landscape becomes visible. At night, the walls were the edge of the known world. By morning, they are once again one structure within a larger country. Perhaps power always changes with perspective. Seen from inside the courtyard, Goodrich dominates. Seen from the river valley, it is one strong shape upon one hill. Seen from the sky, it would be smaller still. Human beings build upward to enlarge themselves. Morning quietly restores proportion. The gatehouse belongs to that larger relationship. Soon the entrance will matter not only as defense, but as passage. People may leave. Others may arrive. Messages may travel. Supplies may move. As state business extends beyond these walls, the castle's life depends upon circulation. A completely sealed fortress would eventually starve. Security therefore requires a paradox. The gate must be strong enough to close and useful enough to open. The same door represents safety and connection depending upon which direction one faces. Inside, it protects. Outside, it invites return. Morning begins to favor the second purpose. The exact moment and procedure of opening need not be invented. It is enough to feel the household's orientation shifting outward. The night was inward. Morning begins to look beyond the walls. Footsteps are becoming more frequent, not hurried, not loud, simply more numerous. The castle is acquiring sound again. One voice, another, an animal. Something moved across stone, water, fire. The household's separate clocks begin to draw closer together. The kitchen has been awake. The stable has been awake. The guard never fully entered sleep. Now chambers begin to join them. A servant passes toward a more private residential area. Another task begins there. The chamber that protected sleep must become a daytime space again. Curtains may be drawn back where appropriate. Bedding attended. A fire strengthened or prepared if needed. A vessel removed. Clothing made ready. The exact details differ by person and circumstance, but the underlying transformation is clear. Night compresses a person's world toward the bed. Morning expands it toward role. The sleeper becomes countess again, servant again, clerk again, chaplain again, baker again, farrier again, guard again. Status returns with wakefulness. Perhaps rank itself sleeps lightly. The body under blankets may temporarily escape public performance, but morning restores expectations. Joan de Valence awakens into administration. Her household exists because there are decisions, obligations, estates, people and resources bound to her position. Widowhood has not removed her from public consequence. It has rearranged responsibility. The household accounts preserve that fact more clearly than any imagined speech could. Her movements generate expenditure. Her presence changes provisioning. Her residence gives this castle a particular density of human life. Around her, practical systems resume. Ralph Blut's world of record will soon become active again. Parchment does not smell like bread. Ink does not warm a room. Yet record-keeping is one of the invisible forms of structure that hold a large household together. Memory alone is not enough when possessions, wages, purchases, and obligations multiply. Writing allows the household to extend beyond the limits of any one person's mind. A clerk converts life into marks. A payment becomes a line. Food becomes quantity. A person becomes a name. A journey becomes an entry. Centuries later, those marks become doors through which we return. There is something beautiful in the unintended generosity of administration. The clerk writes for necessity. Time turns necessity into testimony. Ralph cannot know that his work helps us hear Goodrich again. He does not need to. The value lies precisely in the fact that he was not performing for us. The record is honest in a way monuments cannot always be. A monument says, "Remember me." An account says, 12 of these were purchased. 1 was paid. This much was consumed. And because it is so practical, it brings us unexpectedly close. The chapel receives morning differently from the hall. The growing daylight reaches its windows, and stone with less noise than work reaches the kitchen. Religious life does not need spectacle here. A small space. Clergy belonging to the household, wax, an altar. Objects maintained because belief and status give them importance. Giles of Barrington remains part of this world. The spiritual rhythm of a noble household should not be mistaken for monastic discipline, but religion still shapes how time is understood. The beginning of a day is never entirely secular. A person may ask for protection, offer thanks, remember the dead, attend worship. The exact private devotion of Joan cannot be known. We leave it where evidence ends. But the existence of chaplains and chapel expenditure shows that belief is not decoration added to household life. It is one of its operating systems. The same household feeds horses and souls. The same estate pays for grain and religious service. The same hands may carry a ledger in 1 hour and a devotional object in another. Perhaps modern categories would find this untidy. The medieval world does not. Life is one fabric. Pull one thread and several others move. The chapel's light grows. Wax flame becomes less visually dominant as daylight enters. A candle that seemed powerful during the night now looks small. It still burns. Its meaning has not diminished. Only the room no longer depends upon it for visibility. This is one of the subtle transformations of dawn. Artificial light loses authority. A hearth can still warm. A candle can still signify devotion. But the sun gradually takes possession of sight. The windows become windows again rather than dark boundaries. The outside can be seen through them. Stone reveals texture, cloth reveals color. Faces return fully. The castle becomes visual. In the great hall, the same recovery occurs on a larger scale. The room that held darkness, residual fire, and perhaps sleeping household members begins to return to public usefulness. Those who rested within communal spaces must yield the floor to daytime purpose. Blankets and personal belongings no longer belong where movement will soon increase. People rise into cold air. The warmth created beneath coverings disappears quickly when the body stands. There is that familiar reluctance known across centuries. The first moment after leaving warmth, feet finding the floor, clothing gathered closer, shoulders adjusting to air that feels sharper than it did while lying still. Sleep leaves the body slowly even when work does not wait. Perhaps someone stretches. Perhaps someone does not. We cannot know the gesture. But fatigue is not historically unique. The medieval body is not an exotic body. Muscles stiffen. Eyes resist light. Cold encourages movement. Hunger returns. A person waking in 1296 understands these things without language separating them from us. History is distant until the body enters it. Then distance contracts. The hall begins to open. The great space does not need to become crowded immediately. Morning is a gradual occupation. A bench moved. A table returned to usefulness. A servant crossing with an object. a door remaining open longer than it did during the night, the sound of the household increasing one layer at a time. The fire, if present, becomes less symbolic and more practical. Warmth is welcome, smoke rises. Cold clothing dries more easily near it. A room recovering from night has a particular smell: people, wool, ash, yesterday's smoke, fresh fire, the beginning of food. The great hall connects these smells into one atmosphere. Outside, more of the valley has appeared. Perhaps mist lies low along the Wye, if conditions allow. The castle's height gives a view over a world that still wakes more slowly than the household within. Fields do not change when daylight reaches them, but people begin to move through them. Smoke may rise from distant settlement. A church occupies its place in the landscape. Roads become visible pathways again. What was abstract during night becomes usable. A path can be followed. A river crossing can be judged. A rider can choose direction. The day creates mobility. The castle will not remain isolated. A messenger may leave on some morning. An official may arrive on another. Supplies move according to needs we cannot assign to this exact day. The important thing is continuity. Goodrich is not a stage upon which one perfect historical day occurs. It is one point in a repeating network of days. Joan remains for months. That is what makes this experience so different from a dramatic royal visit lasting a single night. Goodrich becomes household space. Routine has time to form. Servants become familiar with doors. Horses become familiar with stable sounds. Clergy know the chapel. Administrators know where work is done. The Countess does not merely pass through. For a season, this is home. Home may be one of the most difficult historical things to reconstruct. Architecture is easier. We can measure walls, date stone, identify doorways, locate garderobes. Food is easier, accounts give quantities, names survive. But home exists in repetition. The place where one stops noticing the stair, the room whose draught is familiar, the fire one expects to find, the person who always appears from a particular doorway, the sound that no longer needs explanation. Home is what ceases to feel remarkable. So perhaps the people of Joan's household would be surprised by our attention. We look at the gatehouse and see extraordinary medieval engineering. A servant sees the way in. We look at the great hall and see high status architecture. Someone who cleans it sees a floor. We look at the chapel and see a surviving medieval institution. Giles sees work and devotion. We look at a garderobe and find historical fascination. Its user finds relief. Time turns ordinary things into wonders by removing our familiarity with them. To truly enter the past, perhaps we must reverse that process. Let the wonder become ordinary again. Let Goodrich stop being a castle from a book. Let it become inconvenient in places, warm in places, crowded, useful, familiar. A place where someone knows which door sticks. A place where someone knows where bread is stored. A place where someone has walked the same passage so often that they no longer look at the masonry. Then, quietly, the past becomes real. The light strengthens. The stone walls no longer appear black. Their surfaces show variation, mortar lines, edges, places where plaster protects interiors, timber frames, doors. The built world emerges in full, and with daylight comes a curious reversal. During the night, the castle felt intimate because darkness erased the landscape. Now the landscape makes Goodrich more impressive again. The walls rise above the valley. The gatehouse presents itself outward. towers reclaim their defensive character. The keep stands distinctly among later construction. Architecture designed to express authority becomes visible from afar. Yet, having spent the night inside, we know another truth. Behind the wall is a baker. Behind the tower is a sleeping chamber. Behind the gate is a porter. Behind the grand hall are service spaces. Behind the image of power is maintenance. Perhaps no castle should ever be understood from outside alone. Walls exaggerate independence. Inside, everything reveals dependence. The high-status chamber depends on fuel. The meal depends on kitchen labor. The horse depends on hay and iron. The chapel depends on wax and clergy. The estate depends on accounts. The household depends on roads. The castle depends on water. Joan depends upon the household. The household depends upon Joan's estates. All strength is relational. Stone merely makes strength look solitary. The Wye below tells a different story. Water connects. It leaves one place and enters another. It accepts tributaries. It passes settlements. It refuses boundaries that human ownership tries to make permanent. The river's continuity is a quiet counterpoint to the castle's walls. One encloses, the other moves. Both have shaped this place. Perhaps that is why Goodrich feels so complete in the landscape. The castle belongs to height. The river belongs to depth. Stone rises. Water passes. Human life moves between them. Morning reaches the river more fully. The surface now reflects enough light to show motion clearly. The bend that disappeared during darkness has returned. The valley seems broader than it did before the night. Perhaps because we have spent so long enclosed within walls. After many hours inside Goodrich, distance itself feels refreshing. You can let the eye travel over the wall, down the slope, across trees, toward fields, along water. The castle has not released you. It has simply opened. Behind us, the household continues to wake. A kitchen sound, a horse, voices, work. The ordinary morning thickens. Soon there will be enough activity that the deep quiet of the night will seem difficult to remember. This happens every day. Morning overwrites night. By midday, the courtyard may feel as though it was never empty. By evening, daylight may feel as though it had always existed. Human attention belongs intensely to the present condition. Perhaps that is a mercy. We do not carry every hour equally. If we did, life would become too heavy. Goodrich forgets its own night each morning in order to function. The guard yields to another duty or to rest. Servants move. Food appears. Administrative work resumes. Prayer continues. The castle looks outward again. And somewhere among all of this, Joan de Valence continues a life that history has preserved only in fragments. She will eventually leave Goodrich, return, travel again. Her household will change in number. Servants will come and go. Children and relatives will age. William's absence will become older. The accounts will continue until they stop. Goodrich itself will pass through later owners, later alterations, later conflicts. Windows will change. Defenses will change. The barbican that does not exist in our 1296 world will one day be built. The great hall will acquire later architectural features. Centuries will place new pressures upon these walls. Then roofs will vanish. Floors will disappear. Doors will rot away. Fires will stop. People will cease sleeping here. The wind that once remained outside will enter the rooms freely. Moss and weather will claim surfaces that were once protected. Visitors will stand where servants worked. They will look upward through spaces where ceilings once stood. They will call the place beautiful, and it will be. But it will be a different beauty, the beauty of survival rather than habitation. We do not need to travel there now. Our Goodrich is still alive. The floor beneath the great hall is intact. The doors still close. The kitchen still has work. The chapel has not been stripped. The private rooms still belong to household life. The walls are not romantic. They are useful. The castle does not know it will become picturesque. Perhaps every place is most alive before anyone begins preserving it, while it is still being worn down by use. A step polished because people keep stepping there. A door scarred because hands keep opening it. A floor marked by movement. A fireplace blackened because warmth matters more than appearance. A wall hidden partly behind cloth. A stair known too well to be admired. Yews leaves a kind of beauty preservation cannot reproduce. The beauty of need. Goodrich needs its people, and now they fill it again. Daylight has reached the courtyard completely. The well is ordinary. The shadows have shortened. The upper walls hold the clear winter light. The air remains cold, but night no longer magnifies the cold in the same way. Movement creates warmth. Work occupies attention. The household turns outward. Perhaps someone carries bread. Perhaps a stable door opens wider. Perhaps a clerk prepares the materials of record. Perhaps a chaplain crosses toward the chapel. These are possibilities anchored in real roles, not moments we need to claim as documented events on this exact morning. The distinction matters. History gives us boundaries. Within those boundaries, atmosphere can breathe without pretending to know more than it does. And perhaps the past becomes more beautiful when allowed to remain partly unknowable. We have walked through enough of Goodrich to understand that certainty is not required for presence. We know the Countess was here. We know her household occupied these spaces. We know names. We know provisions. We know architecture. We know the river. The rest can remain quiet. A person crosses the courtyard. We do not need to know who. The figure disappears into a doorway. Another appears somewhere else. The household has resumed its flow. Bread toward the hall. Messages toward the gate. Water toward wherever it is needed. Fuel toward fire. People toward duty. The castle has become currents again, exactly as it was before darkness gathered. The difference is that now we have seen what remains beneath those currents when they stop silence. Cold, watchfulness, sleep, the fragile human lights inside enormous darkness. Perhaps that is what we carry away from this place, not a catalogue of medieval facts, not the date of a wall, not the number of towers, but a feeling. The feeling of being protected by stone while wind moves outside. The feeling of a fire becoming more important as the room darkens. The awareness that many sleeping lives can make a fortress feel like a home. The quiet dignity of work that no monument names. The river continuing below everything. And even this does not need to become a conclusion. Nothing at Goodrich concludes because we leave. John will still have bread to make. Walter will still know horses. Ralph Blute will still turn life into written record. Giles of Barrington will still belong to the household's devotional world. Joan will still inhabit her role. Servants whose names disappeared from history will still cross these rooms as vividly as anyone whose name survived. Morning will continue. The fire will need fuel later. The household will become hungry again. The horses will need care again. The chapel will become dim again when the next night comes. The gate will eventually turn inward toward darkness once more, and the Wye will continue around its bend whether anyone looks at it or not. Perhaps, if you remain very still, the castle does not even need us anymore. We can allow ourselves to fall behind. The people move ahead into their day. Their footsteps grow less distinct. The hall fills with life that no longer requires our attention. The courtyard becomes simply another place where work happens. Goodrich stops performing the past for us and returns to being present for them. That may be the gentlest way to leave history. Not by closing a door, not by watching a world disappear, but by realizing the world has become too busy to notice that we are gone. The castle remains on the sandstone height. The morning continues over the Wye. Smoke rises where fires have been made. Water moves below. Stone holds the cold of the night a little longer, then gradually gives it away. A doorway opens. Someone passes through. It closes again. And somewhere long after our footsteps have faded from the courtyard, the ordinary life of Goodrich carries quietly on.